Ma'am, if you stay out here another 20 minutes, you might not wake up tomorrow. Hannah Brooks didn't wait for permission before pulling open the diner door and stepping into the freezing Colorado night. Snow whipped across the empty parking lot, burying tire tracks almost as quickly as they appeared, while the temperature had fallen to 9 degrees and kept dropping. At 32, Hannah was used to being the person nobody noticed unless they wanted something carried, cleaned, or apologized for. She was a curvy waitress with dark hair pinned into a messy bun, tired brown eyes, and a body people had judged long before they bothered learning her name. Tonight, beneath a burgundy winter coat stretched over her diner uniform, she saw two elderly strangers huddled beside a dead sedan near the edge of the highway. The man, perhaps 70, was trying to shield his silver-haired wife from the wind with his own coat. Hannah hurried toward them. "Our phone died," the old man explained through chattering teeth. "Tow truck never came." His wife tried to smile. "We'll manage, sweetheart." Hannah looked toward the diner. The neon closed sign had already been switched on. Her manager, Travis Cole, stood behind the glass, shaking his head. Hannah knew what that meant. She had been warned twice about helping customers after closing, and she desperately needed this job. Her rent was 6 days overdue. Still looked at the elderly woman's trembling hands and made her choice. "You're coming inside." Travis blocked the doorway. "Absolutely not. Kitchen's closed." "They're freezing." "Not our problem." His gaze traveled dismissively over Hannah before he added, "You already give away enough food like you own the place." Hannah's cheeks burned, but she didn't move. She had spent years swallowing comments about taking up too much space, eating too much, being too soft, too ordinary, too easy to overlook. Tonight she swallowed none of it. "Then take their meals out of my paycheck." Travis laughed. "What paycheck? You're done here." The words landed harder than the snow. Hannah stared at him. "You're firing me?" "I'm telling you to choose." Hannah glanced at the elderly couple, then removed her apron and placed it on the counter. "I just did." 20 minutes later, Hannah was driving them through the storm in her 12-year-old Ford, its heater groaning against the cold. She had no job, barely enough gas for the week, and two strangers in her back seat. Yet when the elderly woman whispered, "You shouldn't lose everything because of us," Hannah simply answered, "Nobody should be left outside on a night like this." Her apartment was small, so she took them instead to the modest cabin her late grandmother had left her 8 miles outside town. She lit the fireplace, heated canned soup, found extra blankets, and gave the couple her bedroom while she prepared to sleep on the couch. They introduced themselves only as Frank and Evelyn. What Hannah didn't know was that those names had been deliberately shortened. She didn't know their stranded car was armored. She didn't know the dead phone had stopped working because someone had tampered with their emergency equipment. And she certainly didn't know that 70 miles away, inside a guarded mountain estate, their son had just received word that his parents had vanished. Dominic Moretti was a 37-year-old mafia boss whose name could empty a room without him raising his voice. Wealthy, controlled, and feared by men far more dangerous than Hannah could imagine, Dominic had spent years trusting security systems more than people after a betrayal inside his own organization cost him someone he loved. But tonight that famous control cracked. "Find them," he ordered, his voice dangerously quiet. His men scattered. Hours later, a traffic camera finally produced one image: Frank and Evelyn climbing into an old Ford driven by an unknown woman in a burgundy coat. Dominic enlarged the photograph. He expected an enemy, a ransom crew, perhaps bait for an ambush. Instead, he saw Hannah turning toward his mother, one hand extended protectively as she helped her into the car. Dominic stared at the screen. Then his security chief entered with a second discovery. "Boss, we found the woman's name." Dominic looked up. "Hannah Brooks. Waitress, she was fired tonight." Why? The answer made the room go silent. Because she refused to leave your parents in the cold. Dominic's expression changed, but before he could speak, his phone rang. It was his father, and the first words Frank Moretti said made Dominic rise slowly from his chair. "Son, don't come here with armed men. The woman who saved us has no idea who—" Dominic Moretti reached Hannah Brooks's cabin 43 minutes later, but he did something that stunned every man traveling with him. He ordered the 3 black SUVs to stop nearly half a mile down the snow-covered road. "Nobody approaches unless I call," he said, stepping into the storm alone. His security chief, Marcus Vale, frowned. Frank said someone followed them. You could be walking into a trap. Dominic buttoned his black wool coat and looked toward the faint amber glow between the pine trees. "If it's a trap, I'll know soon enough. If it isn't, I'm not rewarding a woman who saved my parents by terrifying her." Inside the cabin, Hannah had no idea the most feared man in Denver's criminal underworld was walking toward her front porch. She was kneeling beside the fireplace, adding another log while Evelyn slept beneath 2 quilts and Frank watched through the frosted window. "You have family nearby?" Hannah asked. Frank hesitated. "A son. You should call him again. He's probably worried sick." Frank almost smiled at the understatement. Before he could answer, headlights briefly flashed through the trees. His expression hardened. Hannah noticed immediately. "What is it? Turn off the lights." The warmth vanished from her face. "Why?" A dark vehicle moved slowly along the road beyond the cabin, then stopped. Frank reached instinctively inside his coat, but Hannah caught his wrist. "Whatever you're reaching for, don't." For a moment, the elderly man stared at her in surprise. "Stay with your wife," Hannah whispered. "I know this property." She switched off the lamps, leaving only the orange fireplace glow, then moved toward the kitchen and grabbed her grandmother's heavy flashlight. She wasn't fearless. Her hands were trembling, but fear had never stopped her from taking care of someone else. A knock suddenly struck the front door. Hannah froze. 3 measured knocks followed. Frank exhaled. "That's my son." Hannah opened the door only a few inches. The man standing outside was nothing like she expected. Dominic was tall, broad-shouldered, snow-dusting his dark hair and black coat, his face controlled except for the unmistakable worry in his eyes. "Hannah Brooks!" Her grip tightened around the flashlight. Who's asking? For perhaps the first time in years, someone had made Dominic explain himself at a doorway. "Dominic, Frank and Evelyn are my parents." She studied him, then opened the door. Dominic stepped inside, and his entire presence changed when he saw his mother sleeping safely beside the fire. Evelyn woke at his voice. "Dominic?" He crossed the room immediately, crouching beside her instead of issuing orders, and wrapped both hands around hers. Hannah watched the cold stranger become a frightened son for 3 quiet seconds. That was the first thing about Dominic Moretti that confused her. The second came when he stood and faced her. "You brought them here? Their car died. You fed them?" Hannah shrugged. "Soup isn't exactly heroic." Frank spoke from behind her. "She lost her job because she wouldn't leave us outside." Dominic's eyes returned to Hannah. "You were fired?" Embarrassed, she folded her arms across herself. "That's my problem." "Not anymore." Her expression sharpened. "I don't need charity." Instead of becoming angry, Dominic lowered his voice. "Good. I wasn't offering any." Before Hannah could answer, a sharp crack came from outside. The cabin window shattered. Dominic moved faster than she could process, pulling Hannah down behind the stone fireplace and covering her with his body as glass scattered across the floor. "Stay down." But Hannah looked at the broken window and noticed something Dominic hadn't. A thin red laser dot moving across the opposite wall toward Evelyn. "Your mother!" she shouted, shoving Dominic's arm aside and knocking Evelyn's chair backward, just as another shot punched into the wooden frame. Dominic's expression went ice cold. Seconds later, his men surged from the darkness outside while the unknown vehicle tore away through the snow. Dominic could have chased it. Instead, he remained beside Hannah. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine. Look at me." His voice softened only for her. Hannah did, and saw fury there, but none of it was directed at her. Dominic removed his coat and placed it around her trembling shoulders before turning to Frank. "This wasn't an accident on the highway." Frank nodded grimly. Dominic looked at the shattered window, then at the woman who had just risked herself for his mother without knowing anything about their family. "Hannah, you can't stay here tonight." She immediately stepped back. "I'm not going anywhere with a stranger." Something almost like respect crossed his face. "Then don't trust me yet. Trust what you just saw." Outside, Marcus hurried through the door, holding something recovered from the snow. "Dominic, you need to see this." In his gloved palm lay a small tracking device. Hannah stared at it. Dominic didn't. He was staring at the underside, where someone had scratched a symbol he recognized instantly, the mark used by a man Dominic believed had been dead for 3 years. Then Marcus delivered the part that changed everything. "It wasn't attached to your parents." Hannah stared at the tracking device in Marcus's palm, as if it might suddenly explain how her ordinary life had turned into shattered glass and gunfire in less than an hour. "That was underneath my car," she whispered. Marcus nodded. Dominic immediately moved between Hannah and the broken window. "How long could it have been there?" "Hours. Maybe a day." Hannah shook her head. "That doesn't make sense. Nobody follows waitresses who can barely afford new tires." Dominic's jaw tightened. "Tonight, someone did." He ordered his men to secure the cabin, then turned to his parents. "We're leaving." Hannah folded his coat around herself and looked toward the snow outside. "You should. Take them somewhere safe." Dominic didn't move. "I meant all of us." "No. Hannah, I helped your parents because they were freezing. That doesn't mean I'm getting into one of those black SUVs with men carrying guns." Frank almost smiled despite the danger, but Dominic only studied her. Most people obeyed him because they feared what happened if they didn't. Hannah Brooks was frightened and still refusing. "Then you choose," Dominic said. "My home, a hotel secured by my people, or somewhere else you trust. But until I know who put that tracker on your car, you're not staying beside a window somebody already fired through." Hannah noticed something strange in his words. He hadn't ordered her. He had given her a choice. 20 minutes later, after Evelyn quietly asked Hannah to stay with them, she reluctantly climbed into the SUV. As they descended the mountain toward Denver, Hannah finally asked the question nobody had answered. "Who are you?" Silence filled the vehicle. Dominic looked at his mother before answering. "My family has businesses throughout Colorado. Men with rifles don't usually come with restaurant franchises." Frank lowered his eyes. Dominic didn't lie. "I'm the head of the Moretti organization." Hannah had heard the name. Everyone had. Her face went pale. "Moretti." Dominic watched recognition turn into fear. "Yes!" Hannah reached for the door handle instinctively, though the SUV was moving. "So I brought a Mafia boss's parents into my grandmother's cabin." "You brought 2 freezing people inside," Evelyn corrected gently. "That's all you knew, and that's why it matters." Before Hannah could respond, Marcus's phone rang from the front seat. His expression changed as he listened. "Boss, we have another problem." He turned around. The diner burned. Hannah stopped breathing. "What?" "Fire department got there 12 minutes ago. Everyone was out. No injuries." Relief lasted only a second. "Travis?" "Alive." Marcus hesitated. "And telling police you threatened him before leaving." Hannah stared at him. "I never threatened anybody." Dominic's voice became dangerously calm. "Someone wants her blamed." Marcus nodded. "There's more. Police found cash in her employee locker, $20,000. Hannah gave a stunned laugh. "I had $17 in that locker." Dominic watched her face carefully. "Do you believe me?" she asked, and immediately hated how vulnerable the question sounded. He answered without hesitation, "Yes. You don't even know me. I know you lost your job rather than leave two strangers outside. Then you pushed my mother away from a bullet. People reveal themselves when helping costs them something." Hannah looked away before he could see her eyes fill. No one had defended her that quickly in years. The Moretti estate appeared through the snow shortly before dawn, enormous iron gates opening onto a guarded property, illuminated by warm exterior lights. Hannah suddenly felt painfully out of place in her inexpensive boots and diner uniform. Inside, staff members hurried toward Frank and Evelyn, but one elegantly dressed woman stopped when she saw Hannah wearing Dominic's coat. "Who is this?" she asked. Dominic's expression cooled. "Hannah Brooks." The woman's gaze traveled over Hannah with unmistakable contempt. "The waitress from the news?" Dominic turned sharply. "What news?" A television was switched on. Hannah's diner photograph filled the screen beneath a headline connecting her to the suspicious fire. Then security footage appeared, grainy video showing someone shaped like Hannah entering the diner after closing. "That isn't me," Hannah whispered. "I swear." Dominic stepped beside her, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. "I know." The elegant woman stared at him. "Dominic, the Alliance meeting is tomorrow. You cannot bring an accused arsonist into this house." Hannah looked between them. "Alliance?" Evelyn answered reluctantly. "This is Celeste Romano. Her family expects her to marry Dominic." Hannah's face changed before she could hide it. Dominic noticed. Celeste did too. Then Marcus entered, holding a recovered still image from another camera. "We enhanced the footage." Dominic took it and went completely still. The person who had planted the evidence wasn't Hannah. It was Travis. But beside him stood the man wearing the symbol from the tracker, a former Moretti lieutenant named Victor Sands, the same man Dominic had believed dead for 3 years. Marcus lowered his voice. "Boss, Victor isn't targeting your parents." Dominic looked at Hannah. "He used them to find her." Hannah's blood ran cold. "Why would he want me?" Marcus placed a second photograph on the table, taken years earlier. In it stood Victor, Travis, and Hannah's late father. Hannah picked up the photograph with trembling fingers. Her father looked younger than she remembered, standing outside a warehouse beside Travis Cole and Victor Sands, the man Dominic believed had been dead for 3 years. "My father repaired heating systems," she whispered. "He wasn't involved with people like this." Dominic watched her carefully. "What was his name?" "Daniel Brooks." Marcus went pale. Dominic noticed immediately. "You know that name." Marcus hesitated. "Daniel Brooks worked maintenance at one of our distribution properties 8 years ago." Hannah's eyes snapped toward Dominic. "Your property?" "Not directly mine, then. My uncle controlled it." Dominic took the photograph, studying the warehouse behind the 3 men. Something about it disturbed him. 8 years earlier, that same building had been at the center of the betrayal that killed Dominic's younger brother, Anthony. Victor had been blamed for arranging the ambush before supposedly dying 3 years later. Dominic had spent years believing the story was finished. Now Hannah stood in his home, unknowingly carrying a connection to the worst night of his life. "My dad died 6 years ago," Hannah said. "Heart attack." Marcus looked at Dominic. Neither man spoke. Hannah understood the silence. "You don't believe that?" Dominic stepped closer, but she backed away. "Don't." The movement stopped him instantly. "You brought me here saying I'd be safe, and now you're looking at me like evidence." "I'm looking at you like someone has been lying to both of us." "That's not the same thing." Her voice cracked. Celeste, standing near the staircase, folded her arms. "Dominic, this is exactly why she needs to leave. Her father was connected to Victor. She appears the same night your parents are attacked, and suddenly we're supposed to believe she's innocent because she served them soup?" Hannah flinched, but before she could answer, Dominic turned. "Use her name." Celeste blinked. "Excuse me?" Her name is Hannah. The room fell silent. Dominic's voice never rose. And nobody in my house reduces her to what she does for a living. Hannah stared at him. It was such a small defense compared with everything happening around them, yet somehow it reached a place in her that grand gestures never had. Dominic turned back to Marcus. Find everything on Daniel Brooks. 10 minutes later, the first answer arrived. Daniel had not been working for Victor. He had been secretly collecting evidence against him, payroll records, shipping manifests, coded transactions. Daniel had discovered money disappearing through the warehouse and had copied documents before the ambush that killed Anthony. Your father tried to warn my family, Dominic said quietly. Hannah sank onto the edge of a chair. Then why didn't anyone know? Marcus placed an old report on the table because his statement disappeared. Dominic's expression hardened. Only someone inside the Moretti organization could have erased it. Hannah suddenly remembered something, my grandmother's cabin. Everyone looked at her. After Dad died, Grandma told me never to replace the old floorboards in the bedroom. I thought it was sentimental nonsense. Dominic was already reaching for his phone when Hannah grabbed his sleeve. Wait, if someone followed me there tonight, they may know. Dominic covered her hand with not gripping, simply steadying it. Then you're not going back. If my father hid something there, I am. Hannah, you said I could choose. Dominic stared at her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he nodded. And I meant it, but we go together. Before they could leave, Hannah's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number appeared with a photograph taken only minutes earlier through the estate's gates. It showed Dominic standing beside Hannah. Beneath it were 7 words. Give us what your father stole by midnight. Hannah's face drained of colour. Dominic gently took the phone from her. Another message arrived. This one contained a live photograph of her grandmother's cabin and flames beginning to climb the porch. Hannah gasped and rushed toward the door, but Dominic caught her shoulders. They're destroying it. Look at me. She fought tears as he lowered himself slightly so they were eye to eye. Your father didn't protect that secret for 8 years, so you could die chasing it into a burning house. Then it's gone. No. Dominic looked at the photograph again, noticing something Hannah had missed. The fire was concentrated at the front entrance, but behind the cabin, half covered in snow, stood an old red storage shed. Hannah followed his gaze and suddenly froze. Dad's toolbox. Dominic's eyes sharpened. Where? Grandma moved it into that shed after he died. Marcus immediately called the security team, but Celeste had disappeared from the staircase. Seconds later, the estate alarm sounded. A guard rushed inside. Boss, someone just opened the east gate remotely. Dominic looked toward the empty place where Celeste had been standing. Then Hannah's phone rang. She answered before anyone could stop her. Victor Sands' voice came through calmly. Midnight, Hannah. Bring Daniel's toolbox alone, or the next house that burns won't be empty. Then he said something that made Dominic's blood turn cold. Ask your Mafia boss who really ordered his brother's death. Ask your Mafia boss who really ordered his brother's death. Victor's words remained in the silent room long after the call ended, and Hannah slowly turned toward Dominic. For the first time since meeting him, she saw something stronger than anger cross his face, fear of an answer he had spent 8 years avoiding. What did he mean? She asked. Dominic's jaw tightened. I don't know. Then we find out together. Less than an hour later, Dominic's men confirmed the fire department had contained the blaze before it reached the storage shed. The toolbox was still there. Dominic ordered Marcus to retrieve it, but Hannah stopped him. Victor expects me. If your men arrive first, he'll know. You're not walking into his hands. And I'm not sitting here while everyone risks themselves because my father left something behind. Dominic stepped closer. This isn't about whether you're brave. Then what is it about? His voice dropped. I have already buried someone because I failed to see betrayal coming. I won't make that mistake with you." Hannah's expression softened, but she didn't surrender. "Protecting me doesn't mean deciding everything for me." Dominic stared at her, then nodded once. "You're right." By 11:18 p.m., they were moving through the snowy woods behind the damaged cabin together. Hannah wore Dominic's coat over borrowed clothes, while he remained beside her rather than ahead of her. Marcus and his team stayed hidden among the trees. Inside the shed, Hannah found Daniel Brooks's battered steel toolbox beneath an old workbench. The ordinary wrenches and screwdrivers revealed nothing until she noticed the false bottom. Beneath it lay a flash drive, an old ledger, and a sealed envelope with 2 words written in her father's handwriting: "For Hannah." Her breath caught, but headlights suddenly swept across the trees. "He's here," Dominic said. Victor Sanz emerged near the burning remains of the porch with Travis beside him and Celeste Romano walking calmly behind them. Hannah's stomach dropped. Celeste smiled. "You really thought I cared about marrying Dominic?" Dominic's face became stone. Celeste explained that the Romano alliance had been draining Moretti money for years. Victor had survived because someone powerful protected him, and Daniel Brooks had discovered the operation. Worse, Daniel's evidence proved Victor had arranged Anthony's ambush under orders from Dominic's own uncle, who feared Anthony would expose the theft. Celeste had spent years keeping the remaining evidence buried. "Give me the drive," Victor told Hannah, "and you walk away." Dominic stepped in front of her. Victor laughed. "There he is, the great Dominic Moretti, risking an empire for a waitress." Hannah moved from behind Dominic before he could stop her. "No, he's standing beside someone you underestimated. That's why you're afraid." Victor's smile disappeared. Hannah held up the flash drive. "My father died protecting this, didn't he?" Travis looked away, answering without words. Hannah's eyes filled, but her hand remained steady. "Then you're not getting it." Celeste scoffed. "You think Dominic will sacrifice his alliance for you? Look at yourself. You don't belong in his world." Hannah absorbed the words that once would have broken her. This time she stood straighter. "Maybe I don't. But I'm done believing that means I belong beneath anyone." Dominic looked at her with something deeper than protection now. Then he turned toward Celeste. "The Romano alliance is finished." Celeste went pale. "You'll lose millions. Then I lose millions. Your council will turn against you." Dominic reached for Hannah's hand in full view of everyone. "Let them." Victor suddenly lunged toward Hannah, but Travis panicked and grabbed his arm. A struggle erupted. Marcus's team moved from the trees as Dominic pulled Hannah behind the stone wall bordering the cabin. No prolonged gunfight followed. Surrounded and exposed, Victor realized his leverage was gone. Celeste tried to run, but was intercepted at the road. Travis dropped to his knees and surrendered. Then Victor made one desperate move, reaching inside his coat. Dominic stepped toward Hannah instinctively, but Hannah saw the danger first. She grabbed Dominic and pulled him sideways as Marcus tackled Victor into the snow. The weapon slid harmlessly away. For several seconds, Hannah and Dominic remained on the ground together, breathing hard, their faces inches apart. "You saved me," he whispered. "Again." Hannah managed a shaky smile. "You're getting expensive." Dominic almost laughed. Then Marcus approached with Daniel's ledger open in his hands. "Boss, there's enough here to expose all of them." Hannah looked at the envelope still clutched against her chest. Dominic noticed. "Open it when you're ready." She nodded, but before she could answer, Marcus's phone rang. His relief vanished. "Dominic, the Moretti Council moved the alliance vote forward. Midnight. They already know you broke with the Romanos." Dominic checked his watch. 11:52. 8 minutes. Hannah looked at the evidence her father had died protecting, then at the man who had just chosen her safety over his empire. "Then we don't run," she said. She placed the ledger in Dominic's hands. We make sure everyone hears the truth." 8 minutes later, the doors of the Moretti council chamber opened. Every powerful figure inside turned toward Dominic and fell silent when Hannah Brooks walked in beside him, still wearing his black coat and carrying the evidence that could destroy half the room. The Moretti council chamber went silent as Hannah Brooks walked beside Dominic, still wrapped in his black coat, while men who controlled fortunes stared at the former waitress as though she had entered the wrong room. Hannah recognized that look. She had seen versions of it her entire life. The quick judgment, the assumption that a curvy woman in inexpensive clothes should make herself smaller when powerful people were present. Tonight, she didn't. Dominic stopped at the head of the table, but instead of placing Hannah behind him, he pulled out the chair beside his. "Sit!" One councilman stood. "Dominic, the Romano alliance is worth millions. You would destroy it over this woman?" Dominic's expression remained cold. "No, Celeste and Victor destroyed it when they betrayed this family." He placed Daniel Brooks's ledger on the table, and her name is Hannah. Marcus connected Daniel's flash drive to the room's screen. Now, transaction records appeared first, followed by copied shipping manifests, payments to Victor Sands, and documents linking Dominic's uncle to the ambush that killed Anthony. Then came the final file, Daniel's recorded statement explaining that he had discovered the scheme while repairing the warehouse heating system. He had copied everything because he feared the evidence would disappear. Hannah covered her mouth when her father's voice filled the chamber. "If something happens to me, this belongs to my daughter. Hannah deserves to know her father tried to do the right thing." Tears slipped down her cheeks, but she didn't hide them. Dominic didn't interrupt the recording. He simply placed his hand beside hers on the table, close enough to offer comfort without demanding she take it. Hannah looked down, then slowly threaded her fingers through his. That small movement affected him more visibly than any threat had all night. When the recording ended, nobody defended the Romanos. The evidence was too clear. Dominic ordered copies preserved and turned over through his attorneys to the appropriate authorities, while the council formally severed every Romano business connection. Victor, Celeste, and Travis would face the consequences of the evidence against them, but Dominic wasn't watching the council. He was watching Hannah. "Your father wasn't part of the betrayal," he told her. "He tried to stop it." Hannah nodded through tears. For 6 years she had believed Daniel Brooks had simply disappeared from the world without leaving anything behind. Now she knew he had left Courage. Dawn was breaking when they returned to the estate. Frank and Evelyn were waiting near the fireplace. The moment Hannah entered, Evelyn crossed the room and embraced her. "There's our girl." Hannah froze at those 3 words. Our girl. Not waitress. Not the big woman people whispered about. Not someone tolerated until she became inconvenient. She closed her eyes and hugged Evelyn back. Frank smiled at Dominic over her shoulder. "Told you she was special." Later, Hannah stood alone before a tall mirror in the guest room, finally wearing clothes that fit comfortably instead of apologetically tugging at fabric around her body. Dominic appeared at the open doorway but didn't enter. "May I?" She nodded. He stepped inside. "I've spent a long time thinking protection meant controlling every possible outcome," he said. "You proved me wrong twice in one night." Hannah gave him a small smile. "Only twice? I'm still counting." Then his expression softened. "The diner can be rebuilt. Your job can be replaced, but I don't want to decide what happens next for you." Hannah looked at him carefully. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying you choose." Dominic reached for her hand. "If you want to leave, I'll make sure you're safe. If you want help reopening your grandmother's cabin, it's yours. And if you want to stay." For once, the Mafia boss who could silence entire rooms struggled to finish a sentence. Hannah squeezed his hand. "Maybe I'll stay long enough to see whether you're always this awkward before breakfast." He laughed, quietly and genuinely. Weeks later, Hannah reopened a small roadside cafe near her grandmother's restored cabin, where no stranded traveller was ever turned away for being unable to pay. She refused Dominic's offer to buy it for her, so he invested only after she insisted on a real contract with her name on it. Frank and Evelyn became regular customers, and Dominic, he became the intimidating man in the corner who somehow always remembered exactly how Hannah liked her coffee. One snowy evening, he walked across the cafe, took her hand in front of everyone, and kissed her forehead. Hannah no longer lowered her eyes when people looked at her. She had never needed to become thinner, quieter, richer, or more acceptable to deserve love. She had only needed people capable of recognizing the woman she had always been. And Dominic learned that the strongest person in his world wasn't the one everyone feared. It was the woman who had opened a door on a freezing night when kindness cost her everything. Sometimes one decision changes more than one life. So what would you have done if you were Hannah that night? Protected your only job, or opened the door for two strangers in the snow? Tell us in the comments. And if you believe kindness can return when you least expect it, subscribe to the channel for more stories of courage, healing, and unexpected love.